voting in an off year, elections typically is not a high-profile issue, but there's been some recent Trump administration actions that have raised the profile in this current election year. With the Federal Department of Justice asking states for a variety of information, including voter roll information that they're going to collect together in their own kind of database for enforcement reasons. And the more recent announcement from President Trump that he wants to, through executive order, eliminate mail-in voting as a means of submitting your ballot. So there are a lot of concerns, as illustrated by those actions, around election security, election integrity, a lot of them genuine, And the question that we have is, how can we address these concerns around election integrity without undermining people's right to vote?
That's a great question, and it's an important one. I mentioned earlier in Utah County using AI for tracking your ballot. That's a way that increases your confidence in your mail-in ballot in a mail-in process. Maintaining your voter rolls well is another way to, increase that confidence. I do think that it would be short-sighted to eliminate mail-in voting. I've got 8 younger brothers and sisters. I am the oldest of 9 children. There's 17 years between me and my youngest brother. So when you think about moms, conservative moms with big families, if they've got a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, it might be kind of difficult for them to go stand in line at the polls to vote on Election Day. We need to have that option for people to make sure that the people that want to vote do get to vote. And there are ways to make it more secure, i.e. like the ballot tracking, like voter rolls, even, for voter registration and voting on Election Day, where we have, it's controversy about voter ID. Yes, voter ID can make elections more secure. The flip side of that is if we're going to do that, we'd still want people to be able to vote. So we need to make it pretty easy for people to get that photo ID. If they can't afford the photo ID, maybe they should get one for free. If they need help figuring out what paperwork they need to get, there should be a place that they can call. We should make sure that people have the capacity to get that photo ID so that they can vote, and also so they can, get a job and have a bank account and do other things that you need to do to be in modern society if you don't have one. If you are out there and those are kind of the top things. I think, if you're going to do vote by mail, another thing is give people that option, have them request the mail-in ballot versus automatic vote by mail. That way, someone's actually requested it. Another thing you can do when you start thinking about election integrity and voting by mail, one of the problems that we have is we have states that will allow ballots to come in for 2 weeks to a month after the election. And when this happens, results can change, and then it makes people question things. So making sure that there's a pretty quick cutoff date so that we can know election results sooner, so that people aren't sitting around stewing about who really won. Also making sure that our elections administrators are properly funded. We had a situation in Arizona where we didn't know the winner of a congressional race for quite a while after the election because they lost a ballot counting machine in one part of one county, and there wasn't a spare one in the whole state. They had to stop counting for 3 days because the ballot counting machine broke, and they had to fly in a new ballot machine from another state. So even just making sure that you've got a couple backup, that you've funded your election administration systems enough that you have a backup ballot counter so that people can get the results sooner. I think there's also questions about timing of when you send out the ballots. They send out ballots and do early voting starting pretty early. And, sometimes you've got your end of October surprise. Americans need to think about in that process of voting when they can early vote and when they are going to vote by mail, vote and vote in time, but make sure that you give yourself enough time to see the election play out. So
some of these concerns, like I said earlier, on election integrity are clearly genuine. They're coming from experiences people have had, things that are things we need to think through from a security standpoint. Some of them, as they're described, it can become apparent that they're based on information that maybe somebody saw online or was referred to, from the fifth person in the email string or something like that. And the information that's driving it is at least questionable and ought to be examined maybe a little more thoroughly. But that said, that's the environment politically that we're in dealing with these concerns. So how do we help voters who are concerned about election integrity understand what the more genuine concerns are from just an objective standpoint and an information-based standpoint versus ones that might be being driven by some form of misinformation?
You got to get back to the basics. What is election integrity? It's a citizen reasonably believing that when they vote their ballot, that it's going to be counted and counted timely and accurately. And that's what it is. Anything else too far afield from that is going to muddy the waters, right? Election integrity isn't deplatforming a sitting United States president because you think he is spreading misinformation on his social media account. We're a country that believes in freedom of speech, for example. But when we start doing that and we add these extra issues, kind of like if you look at climate change, what causes climate change? It's the uncontrolled combustion of fossil fuels for industrial purposes. That's it, right? It's not lack of union labor. It's not a lack of environmental justice. It is simply uncontrolled combustion of fossil fuels for industrial purposes. And if you want to solve that challenge, you should focus on that instead of going to the American people like they did with the Inflation Reduction Act and say, hey, we need electric vehicles to save the planet from climate change, but we're not going to give you the full tax incentive for them if your vehicles aren't made by a shop with union labor. Right? That's getting afield from the issue as another example. And I think just sticking to the reality, okay, how do we make sure that voting systems and voting administration is secure so that the American people have confidence that when they go vote, their vote is counted, it's counted accurately, and it's counted timely. That's it. When we start layering in other things, then we start politicizing it in a way that's unhelpful.
Thanks for watching that clip of Defending Ideas. For the full conversation, click the link in the description and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your shows.